Hello, my name is Monica Medina Muro, and I am the student art historian for Northern California Arts Incorporated. And I'm here today with Sandy Delehanty in her home studio to talk about her life and her work.
Hi, Monica. Let's see, where should we begin?
Would you like to talk about the first instance in which you realized that you really loved art?
I don't remember because I would have been like 3.
Too young.
I was always the kid that was drawing and you know, cutting out paper dolls and coloring outside the lines and that was it. You know, I was always like that way. My mother would say when dinner was ready, she'd call and I'd always say, "Sandy, busy," and I'd have stuff all over the floor that I was creating with. So it was always there.
Yes.
But in elementary school, I had a grandmother who lived in Los Angeles, and we lived in a teeny tiny town up in Siskiyou County. And I think she was concerned that I would just stay there my whole life, you know, marry the farmer, and that would be it. And she wanted me to see more of the world. And so she started telling me from the time I was about 10 that I should go to college and that I should learn to have some kind of a career that I loved and that I could support myself and my children if I had children at any point, because you can't always depend on your spouse doing it. She had that happen to her. My grandfather could no longer work from the time he was in his 40s, and she supported the family. So she was the one who first said, you need to go to college. And then by the time I was 12, I decided I was going to be an art. First I thought I would be a professional artist, and then everyone said, well, it's hard to make a living, that's like being an actor or something. You should be an art teacher. So I said, okay, I'll do that. But I really wanted to be a professional artist. So after I graduated, I went to Chico State, and the reason I went there is because I could afford it better than anywhere else. Rent was the cheapest of all the state schools, and the state schools were the cheapest to go to, quite honestly. I really wanted to go to the art school in San Francisco, but that was out of the question. And I was also excited about UC Davis because I already knew who Wayne Thiebaud was. I don't know how, but I somehow did. And but when I looked at the cost of housing there, and it was a quarter school, so you had to pay fees quarterly. So even though there wasn't tuition then, there was fees. So I just thought, okay, I better stick with Chico because I don't know what I'm going to do for money past my freshman year anyway. So I went to Chico, and as it turned out, there was good art instructors there too. And at that time, acrylics were just the rage, the big thing. And I wanted to paint in oils, but something happened to my skin when I touched oil paints or mediums. It all broke out. So I became an acrylic painter, and I got a degree in art. As a acrylic painter was my main medium, and music was my minor. And then I went on for an extra year and got my California teaching credential. In those days, you didn't do your student teaching until the last semester of the credential program. So you'd done all that studying, and then you went out and did your teaching. And I taught an art class at Paradise High School. I had one student who wanted to learn, and the rest of them just wanted to play. I hated it because I was just the policeman all the time.
Yes.
And it totally, I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do now?
Mm-hmm.
That was it. Okay, I'm never going to be a teacher. Mm-hmm. So I worked 2 jobs for a while and saved up money, and I went to Europe. And I hitchhiked around Europe with a girlfriend, and we started running low on money. And so I discovered that I had been sketching. I've always liked to sketch, and I've been sketching as I went. And I discovered that people would ask if they could buy my sketches, usually tourists, at some place like Trevi Fountain in Rome or something. So I went to the art store, and I bought the old-fashioned dipping pen, and India ink, and a pad of paper, and I managed to support Christine and I for another 2 months in Europe.
Wow.
Selling sketches.
That's
she
amazing.
she would do the selling. She had these little Berlitz books, and she'd look up the language, and wherever we were, and then she'd have to do the negotiating. She was a salesperson, and I was the producer. Worked out pretty well, actually. And then I got back home, and it's like, okay, now what am I going to do? And I really have to go get a real job. Well, if I have to go get a real job, why don't I get a job in a city? I never lived in a city. And if I have to live in a city, why don't I try a foreign city? So I saved up money again, doing part-time jobs and stuff, and I went to London. And I worked there for 3 years. And in an office job, worked for IBM, and I hated it. It was like, no, I'm not an office job person. This is not me either. No, this isn't it. So in the meantime, I got married to a Brit, and then we moved to California, to Sacramento, and had my son, and I was a stay-at-home mom at that point, and I discovered that there were these art meetings at the McKinley Art Center. Turns out it was NCA, and they had this art club going. And I went to a few of them, and then I don't know, everything got crazy. My husband left, I was a single mom, I had to work, so the art got put aside. I didn't do any more art for ages. It was kind of disappointing. But, you had to do what you had to do. So, earn a living, take care of my son, that was that. And then after my second husband, Burke Delehanty, and I got married in 1984. And in it was that summer, I think, I met his Aunt Betty. And Betty Lynch, she was an AWS signature artist, watercolor artist, we'll know what that means. She was the most amazing painter I'd ever seen. And she's the one who said, well, why don't you paint watercolors? You can paint them anywhere. It's, they're not going to get paint all over anything. You can paint on a little piece of paper. I could do that. Kind of like I used to do my ink sketches, So I started doing watercolor at night, after work, and Burke could pick up a book to read, Mark could be doing homework. It was like, okay, I can watercolor. And I'd play around with it, but I didn't really get serious with it. And then Betty said, okay, you have to set a goal. I said, well, what was your goal? She said, my goal was to get AWS signature status, American Watercolor Society. I said, okay, that'll be my goal too. And she said, well, you better find a watercolor organization. Because when you go to a watercolor organization's meeting, they usually have demonstrators, and you can learn lots of different techniques, and you'll meet other artists, and you can ask questions. So I did that. I started attending, by that time, NCA and WASH and all were at Fine Art Center. I found the Fine Art Center. Burke and I were living in Sacramento at the time. So I started going to the WASH meetings, at least the night ones, because I was still working. And once in a while I'd sneak in on a Monday and work on the Saturday to make up for it. But mostly it was the night meetings. And that was really good because I, again, saw many ways of doing the medium. And I was watching people teach all the time at these demos. And I kept thinking, I still have my teaching skills. Maybe I could be doing that. And long story short, worked a lot of years, saved up a lot of money, and then when Mark was finished with college, I decided, okay, let's try doing art full-time. But I'd already figured out, at that point I was selling paintings to the UC Davis Art Foundation. I had a gallery selling paintings, but it would come and go. You'd sell some and then nothing, and then some and then nothing. And in the meantime, you've got expenses. You've got the materials, you've got the framing, so it all adds up. So I decided, okay, I should try teaching. So before I quit my job, saved up some money, opened an official business banking account, and I did some studio tour, open studios to see if people liked what I was doing. And I'd sit here and demonstrate. By that time we'd finished this house. And I'd sit here and demonstrate when people came in, and they would ask me questions. And my hostess, the first time she did this, she didn't tell me. She was downstairs taking a list of people who wanted to sign up for my classes.
Wow.
I didn't have them yet.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
I didn't even think people would be that interested. I was just testing the waters.
Oh my gosh.
She had a mailing list all ready to go.
That's
so I
amazing.
started teaching, and I did the same thing that I had seen in Wash. I started teaching at the Fine Arts Center, one afternoon a month in the beginning until people knew who I was, and kind of took off from there. And that was great, because then when I quit the job, I already had classes lined up, so I had some income to cover. And that covered me in between the rest of it. I still don't make a lot of money, but, it's I could pay my health insurance. That was a really big thing at that time, was get that darn health insurance paid. And I could pay all my expenses. And at that point, that's what we needed me to do. So that's when I got started. And watercolor was my favorite medium. Painted only watercolors for several years. And I entered a lot of shows. I'd get into the shows in Sacramento and out here, but not the big national shows. And I was really busy teaching. I still have so many friends that I met through teaching. Teaching was so much fun. But it was also a lot of stress. And I kept thinking, someday I'd like to just paint and see if I can accomplish that goal of the AWS, see if I can get more paintings out there in galleries. Just paint and not also have to be doing lesson plans and all the rest of it. And the other thing I wanted to do was travel more. And travel's expensive. And Brooks' Aunt Betty, here she comes again, she was such a wonderful mentor to me. She would teach watercolor sketching classes to people in Europe. And she got paid. And she said, well, they pay all your expenses except the flight. But they also pay you instruction money. And you can use that to cover the flight. So I thought, okay, how do I do that? And basically you have to find a tour company to hire you. And long story short, I did. I went on a workshop with an Oregon painter, and then that woman hired me. And I worked for her twice, and then this other company called French Escapade found me. I found them, whatever. And they've been my favorite ever since. And also Toscana Americana. They're two small group companies, and all they do is workshops. And they don't have more than 12 people in a class.
Wow.
Which is wonderful.
Yes.
Because the kind of thing I'm teaching is sketching.
Yeah.
So this is what I did from 2004 until I retired from the teaching part in 2018. I taught people to do these little sketches. This is the most recent one in Santa Barbara. You just have this little journal and you do a sketch of where you are, you write little notes, whatever. This one is missing a few pages, but anyway. We went to this wonderful part of town where this crazy architect had houses and things, and so I did little sketches around the neighborhood. This was a chimney on one of his houses, this was a wall on another house, this was in a courtyard, here's a door, tied it all together with the architect's name. That's the kind of thing that I would teach my students to do. Sometimes we do a very detailed painting, sometimes we do something simple. This is one I did recently up in big trees, Calaveras big trees, of a sequoia. I think it's a sequoia, yeah. Here's one from Barcelona. Am I moving this too fast?
No, it's okay.
Let me hold that nice and steady, maybe. Is it steady enough?
Yes.
This doesn't make sense because it's upside down from where you are, but this is good.
Yes.
This sketch, as often happens, this sketch became a big painting. When I came home, I painted a painting I called Writing on the Walls, based on this sketch that was done in Barcelona. And it is now on the Crocker Art Auction.
Wow.
You have about 8 more days to buy it.
Yes, everyone hear that? 8 more days.
8 more days you can buy it. Go to the Crocker Art let's see, Crocker Art Museum art auction. You can buy it online or you can go to the big gala. It's all right there on their website. So, and speaking of auctions, this one up here, usually I have paintings in progress sitting here on this shelf and I stand back and look at them. Right now I don't have one at that state, so I brought that painting home because it's time to go to KVIE. So this one is called Yosemite Valley Sunset, and it's going to be up for auction at KVIE. I think this is something like the 42nd or 43rd year in a row that I've been in their art auction. I worked there as a volunteer also for 25 years. So this is KVIE, that's where that's going. And this painting I recently finished, and I entered it in a competition. I haven't heard if it's gotten in or not. And it's Notre Dame, done from sketches and photographs exactly 4 years after this painting.
Wow.
This is just a poster because the Sacramento Fine Arts Center had the traveling show of American Watercolor Society. I finally got in, and this was the first painting I got in. It's called Notre Dame, of course, and it was one of my earlier poured paintings, which is what I do now, and I'm going to show you in a minute how that works. But so this was as I first saw Notre Dame, and this was 4 years later. This painting, the original of that painting, was flying home or driving home in the back of a FedEx truck, I don't know which, the day that Notre Dame caught fire.
Oh my gosh.
And I was so praying that it would get here in one piece, and it did. It made it home. Anyway, so, but getting back to this travel thing, what I decided to specialize in was exactly what Burke's Aunt Betty was doing. Instead of doing big paintings, I really do like these little sketches. I think they're more, it's kind of like you're creating a storybook, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's like a story of your trip. Here's the latest one that I did. This is a tree up on the hill behind us.
Wow.
At sunset. I just got this new book and I wanted to try out the paper.
That's beautiful.
And I did this one with lots of layers, which is a real test for paper in a sketchbook. If it can handle layer after layer after layer, then it's really good paper. So that's why I did this. And I like this so much that I think I'm going to do a big one of it.
Wow, that would be...
I thought it was great fun.
Yes.
I just love the golden hour colors that I was able to get.
Yes, I could definitely see those colors.
Yeah.
It's like...
So I will do it as a poured painting, and that's what the subject will be. That tree is right up on the hill behind our house. So I know right where the tree is.
Yeah.
So anyway, let me show you what I do when I travel. This is my backpack. Sometimes I make it even smaller and I use a purse, but that's my backpack. I sit when I sketch, and fortunately I have short legs, so I can carry a stool that's short enough that it fits in my backpack, because you're not always someplace where, you know, you can find a cafe table maybe if you're lucky, but sometimes the view isn't where you want it to be. So that's my little stool.
Wow.
That's the first thing that's in my backpack. So then, this is my studio. Everything that I need to paint my painting is in here. If it doesn't fit in here, I don't need it. That's my rule. And if it all fits in there nice and tight, that shows me I haven't forgotten anything.
Okay.
Which is important, because sometimes you'll be all spread out and a little thunderstorm will hit and you're running. You got to make sure you got everything.
Yes.
So, you know, it's good philosophy to make sure it all fits. So my brushes are in here. Ta-da. Okay, I had to make this so I get one small enough to fit. So there's those brushes. I have in here all kinds of pens. I love drawing with pens, lots of different pens, and travel brushes in here. These are my favorite little brushes. Where are they? Here's somewhere. Here. Okay. This is a wonderful little Da Vinci brush. See how this works?
Oh, yeah.
The reason that you do this is
Wow.
the brush is protected.
Uh-huh.
It's a good sable brush, a good point. So it's much better protected than these brushes are in something like this. Unfortunately, those particular brushes I like, and they don't come as travel brushes. So there's my travel brush. And there's a couple of different ones in there. There's pencils, pens. Here's my palette. Oops. There we go. Here's my little palette. Oops. As you can see, well used.
Yeah.
And voila, we have another travel brush.
Oh,
A littler
nice.
one.
Yes.
Isn't it cute?
And it fits perfectly.
Yeah. So I've got those little brushes, erasers. This is my favorite. I have had this since 2004. Cheap Joe's catalog. It is called a Tri-Washer.
Oh, nice.
And it's like a little bucket for your water.
Perfect.
And because you have three things, you can tell I wash off warm colors, cool blues, cool colors, and yellow. So instead of your water getting really dark, chocolatey, muddy, and making dark chocolatey paintings, you have cleaner water longer.
Wow.
Which can be really important because
Great
sometimes you're out where there's no water. You have to carry your water in your backpack with you. So anyway, here's my little spray bottle and a couple other little gadgets, but it all fits in there. That's the important part. And when I'm sitting on my stool, this is very necessary. This goes on my lap because I lost a very expensive brush on my first trip because it fell between my legs. I was painting on my lap. And as you can see, I wiped the color excess and water off on that. So that's why the towel. The whole works goes in the backpack, and away I go. So anyway, maybe you can shut it off. Oh, wait a minute. One more thing I want to show you.
Okay.
New palette I just got. This is the Whiskey Painter palette. And this one is if you want to use your own colors, whereas the other one comes with those half pan colors. And you squeeze the tubes in. But these little containers are magnets, and this is metal. Consequently, you can move things around. You can take them out to clean them really easy. It's a super good little palette. And then a friend of mine told me about this. This is the pocket palette. Look at that.
Yes. Like
So
the palm of
that
your
and that
hand.
tiny little brush, this little brush, I'm ready to go.
Yes.
This is from arttoolkit.com.
Yes.
So cute. Anyway, just got that. These days, I paint more by pouring my watercolors than I do by brushing them. And that's how this painting was done. I'm very interested in getting a kind of a graphic, sort of a woodcut look. If you want to show the calendar front here, this is an old woodcut. I like this style, and I thought it would be fun to try and create a style like that in watercolor. And I've been doing this for several years now, and it seems to be working. I've been getting into a lot of the big shows and winning some awards with this style. And I'm just having a lot of fun doing it. Basically what I'm doing is I am using this stuff, which is a white mask. It's a liquid, and then when you put it on, it dries hard and it protects the paper from paint going there. So think batik. You know how batik artists use wax to keep dye from going where they don't want it? Same idea. So I apply this with my palette knife because I can make tiny little lines, or I can pour it on and scoop it around however I want to do. And the way I work is I start with a white piece of paper, and the first mask has only the areas that will remain white or very light. Pour the color over, let it dry, and then I do the second mask on the things that are next to the lightest color. And then I pour the next layer of color and let it dry. And I just keep going, layer after layer after layer. I tend to use 3 primary colors in most of the paintings. And I end up somewhere around 20 layers when I'm done. And then when it's completely done, it has mask all over the place. And I pull the mask off, and this is what it looks like when it comes off. It's like rubbery, like rubber cement or something. And then the paper is completely clean of this, and the paint is there, and I'm done. So that's how I do it. Sometimes I have to come back in and do a little brush work, but that's how I work. And when I say I pour paint, this is what I'm talking about. I put a little daub of paint in here, and I'm going to mix it around and mix it around. And it's very important that I get it really well mixed so that there's no little blobs of paint that show up anywhere. And this is a dark color, so it's a little bit harder to see. Plus I got a little too much water in there when I started. So let's see. Oh yeah, see, I can still see that blob there?
Mm-hmm.
We've got to get rid of that. That's about right. Okay. And the other color I'm going to pour is this beautiful, that's Imperial Purple, and this is Cobalt Teal Blue. And both of these colors have the same thing in common. They are colors that granulate, and that is an art term meaning that they have little bits of pigment that they leave behind, and so they little tiny speckles, and that kind of gives like a foggy look. I'll show you here in my color testing examples. Maybe you can get really close on the camera. Can you see that? See those little specks in there? That's where the pigment has settled down in the dents of the paper. And when you use a color that does that, you can get the effect of clouds or fog or mist. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm going to pour what's going to be fog in a painting of redwoods. So remember that drawing I showed you a little while ago in my little travel journal of the redwoods? Well, this is sequoia, and these are redwoods, that was sequoia. And that's what I'm going to try to do, is make the fog that will be in the background behind the tree. Let's see what color I got there. Yeah, I think that's going to work. Okay. And I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. If I turn it on an angle, the masking fluid is already on the tree here. Is that all?
Yep, that's reading.
Okay, good. It's kind of a yellowish looking thing. It's on there and it's dry. So when I pour the color on, no color is going to go there. I also can move my color around by using Kleenex and the spray bottle. Kleenex can pick up excess color, just like I'm doing here. And my two little spray bottles, I have two different ones depending on how hard I want to spray, they move the color around. And then the last thing one needs is to wet the paper, because I want the color to be able to roll around in the paper. My paper is stretched very, very tightly over a frame. It's the kind of frame that people who work on canvas use to stretch their canvas. It's called canvas stretcher bars. I soak the paper in the bathtub, which is my great soaking bin. And then I thumbtack it on the stretcher bars while it's wet, and it shrinks up, and now it's nice and tight. And that keeps it from buckling when I'm pouring color, which is something very annoying. And it'll make the color run in the wrong place if the paper is all warped and buckled, so you don't want that. Okay, this is the boring part, trying to get it all nice and wet. Should I get it on your camera's view? Okay. I think this is one way to tell if your paper is completely wet. You can look at it on an angle. Sometimes you can see little dry spots. Okay, I think I got it. All right. I have 2 cups in here. Let's see, let's put this over here. Okay. So I've got 2 cups in here that kind of hold my board up because I'll be pouring the color off when I'm done. Either that way or this way. I think I'll probably pour it this way because I might want it to be a little lighter at the top to indicate that maybe light's coming through the fog up there, and a little more dense at the bottom. And I may need to do more than 1 layer of this. We'll find out. Okay. I don't want to dump it all at once, so I have these little pipettes, and I also have small little cups so that I can pour a little bit. Isn't that pretty?
Yeah, it's a beautiful color.
Yep. Okay, let's use this one. All right. Now, I'm going to start with this pretty... Do I want to have it pretty level or no? I think I want it slightly tipped in the first place. Okay. And which color am I going to start with? I think maybe the purple. This is the very first layer, so it's going to be light, and it might get sprayed off even if it's not light enough. And you get that close. See how it's running down there?
Yeah.
Now right now it's running over the sort of the back side of this tree that's on that side, but that's going to be okay. At this point, not worried about that. And then we're going to use it over here. Watercolor always dries much lighter than it appears to. That can be a little bit frustrating at times because you think you've got it perfect and then it's not the color you wanted. But it's always better to have it too light than too dark.
True.
Because you can always add another layer. That's easy. Okay, so now look at that color.
Wow.
Pretty?
Yeah.
And you can already see where it's starting to bump into this center tree here. You can see where the masking fluid is, so it's not going to be where that mask is. And as I roll it over there, okay, I like the way it left this light on this tree, but I think I need a little light. Maybe I don't want that. Maybe I want my Kleenex. I think I want to take a little light off this side because my light's going to be coming from that direction. I'm going to pull that purple off there so that it doesn't affect the color too much that I'll apply later for the tree. The tree will be poured with yellow and pink and blue. And honestly, sounds weird, but it'll work.
Yes, I trust. We definitely trust you.
So I got some purple there. Now let's see. Now let's go. Some of the blue. The purple and the blue together, I think, make a really nice fog look. I did this on a painting I was doing of morning mist on the Merced River in Yosemite Valley. It worked really well. This particular combination really looked just like I wanted it. I was happy with that. And to make it look more like fog, what I will do at some point is to go in and paint very light, sort of shadowy shapes of the trees that are back in the woods. Okay, that's pretty good. Down here, though, I don't want this striped thing going on. This is going to be ferns and things going on down here, so we don't want all this. So I'm kind of using my spray bottle as an eraser, just sort of moving the color out of the way. Doesn't matter if there's a little bit of it in there, but I don't want very much of it in there. I see where it would be nice if I got a little bit of this lavender on the side of this tree, which is kind of the shadowy side anyway. Might as well make use of that lavender. that tree is going to be a little bit further back, so that's okay. All right. I think just get rid of this stuff down here in the bottom, and I think we're done
Okay.
with this pour. So at this point in my painting career, I've now achieved my goal of getting some awards that I wanted, the signature status in American Watercolor Society, which is kind of the most prestigious organization for watercolor painters in the world. And it's the second oldest, I believe. I think the oldest one is the Royal Watercolor Association in England.
Wow.
I don't know if there's an older one in China. I'm not sure about that. It's a wonderful organization. But anyway, I accomplished that goal, and I'm fortunate to have two galleries that sell my paintings. Sparrow Gallery in Sacramento does a wonderful job of representing me, and I just so enjoy working with Cynthia Liu, the owner. She's such a kick, and so dedicated and so hardworking. And then the other gallery that represents me is in Reno, Nevada. He was in Truckee, and it's called Art Obsessions. And again, I have a lovely gallery owner there, a wonderful man named David, that I like working with. So I've got a good place for my paintings to go, because, you know, when you paint as much as I do, what are you going to do with them all? Anyway, so I'm set with my galleries. I also belong to a co-op gallery in Auburn, just because it's fun to meet the public and see how they react to my work. I think that's always a good thing.
Yes.
And I love working with the other artists, because I'm home all the time in my studio. You need to be out around other artists. But there's one more thing that I really have believed in for a long time, and that is that just like in so many fields, women kind of get left out in the world of art. The statistic that really makes it the most obvious is that if you look at the permanent collections in all of the art museums in the United States, and you look in those collections, that's permanent collection means the art that is owned by the museums. If you look at that artwork, guess what the percentage is that was actually created by a woman in every museum in this country? Any idea?
It has to be less than, I don't know, 10%?
10% is actually double.
Oh my gosh.
3 to 5% of the art in American museums was created by women.
Wow.
And from what I've seen in Europe, it's not much better.
No.
If even that good. I don't know. So that is just totally wrong. And also, if you look at a lot of the top galleries in the country, I'm looking over here because I'm keeping an eye on
course.
where the color is drying.
Of
I don't
course.
want any weird little thing happening to me.
Yes.
If you look at all the top galleries in the country, you'll find way more men artists than you'll find women. Most of the jurors of shows are men artists, not women. So something needed to be done. And about 30 years ago now, some very smart women who painted Western paintings decided to form an organization and get themselves into museums and get themselves into galleries by working together. So they formed American Women Artists. I joined the organization in 2016, and I became a board member in 2018. And I have had so much fun meeting the most amazing women working through this organization. I encourage every woman artist, please go on the website, AmericanWomenArtists.org, read the newsletters, read the missions, read the blog. There's a wonderful blog on women in art in history that's fascinating, and see if maybe it's an organization you might want to join. The big thing is we have a mission to do 25 museum shows in 25 years. And what we do is we go out and find a museum and we say, look, we have all these professional artists and we'll do a juried show, we'll do all the work, we'll do all the jurying, we'll bring it to you, hang in your museum. And all we ask is that you hang it for whatever time frame they can negotiate, and that you buy 1 or 2 paintings or sculptures for your permanent collection from the women in the show. And in the beginning, it was a real hard sell, and we still are only in small museums, but we're getting there. We have now had 6 museum shows.
Great. Yes.
And every single one of those shows have produced purchases in museums, as also some corporations, and major galleries are now picking up some of the artists from those shows because they see them in the shows. So it is working. We are making more opportunity. We're also doing a lot of education of women. We have a symposium, and at that time we bring in women who have done really well in their careers to share their secrets. We bring in demonstrators. It's always just an amazing week of women all working together. And that happens when the museum show opens each year.
Okay.
So we're doing a lot, and we have a lot more things we want to do. And my time on the board is 5 years, and I'm really getting a lot out of it. And I think it's wonderful to be able to give back.
Yes.
And especially, I mean, I'm still learning. I'll always be learning.
Yes.
I think when you stop learning, you become dull.
Yeah.
And your paintings show it. They become mechanical.
Yes.
But I think this is the most important organization that I can work with to give back. I also believe in local organizations like NCA and WASH and the Sac Fine Arts Center, because artists need to support each other, and we need to support what we do. And we need to make the public aware of what we do and teach them to value what we do. And that's pretty difficult when, they can buy something on Etsy or Amazon that Amazon is probably made in China or somewhere, and it's $15. How can I compete with that, So we have to support ourselves, we have to support each other, and that's why I'm on American Women Artists, and that's why I would encourage a lot of women to join. And this is really cool. This year we've had 2 shows, 1 museum show and 1 online show. And 4 local artists, all of which show at Sparrow Gallery, where I show, got into those shows.
Oh, wow.
And 2 of us are award winners.
Oh,
I won
congrats.
it's called the Kim Minicello Memorial Excellence in Watercolor Award.
Yes.
Kim Minicello is an absolutely fabulous watercolor artist that just suddenly died last year. It was really sad. And so we have a memorial award. And I won that one in the museum show. And then on our online show, Jaya King won the abstract award. And Jaya is also an artist at Sparrow Gallery.
Wow.
And I won the Masters Award. So Sacramento did pretty well.
Yes, yes.
Anyway, but it's been really rewarding working with that organization, and it's fun to give back, and because when you give, you always get so much more.
Yep.
We all know that, right?
Yes.